The impossible cartography. Senior Navigator Vexel clicked her crystalline manipulators in frustration as she studied the holographic display floating before her. The three-dimensional stellar map, a marvel of galactic mapping consortium engineering, showed every star system, nebula, and spatial anomaly with perfect precision, except for one glaring, swirling void where human territory should have been. "Run the calibration sequence again," she ordered, her four eyes narrowing as they reflected the chaotic light patterns emanating from the human sector. "This is the 8th attempt, Senior Navigator," replied her assistant Calmer, his translucent skin pulsing with bioluminescent patterns of concern. The results remain consistent with all previous scans. Vexel's sensory fronds twitched in irritation. The quincentennial Galactic Mapping Conference was mere cycles away, and as lead navigator for the consortium, her reputation hung in the balance. For over 12,000 standard years, the consortium had maintained the most accurate and reliable spatial charts in known space. Their maps guided trillions of sentient beings across interstellar distances, enabling commerce, diplomacy, and exploration throughout the 27 recognized species of the Galactic Compact. Yet human space remained a maddening exception. "Display historical overlay," Vexel commanded. The hologram shifted, showing a time-lapse of the region. 80 cycles ago, when humans first achieved faster-than-light travel and were cautiously welcomed into the Compact, their territory had been clearly defined. A modest sphere containing their home system and a handful of fledgling colonies. 40 cycles ago, the borders became slightly blurred but still navigable. Now, it was as if space itself rejected measurement. The doors to the cartography chamber slid open with a soft hiss as Consortium Director Osric entered. His ancient body, a complex ecosystem of crystalline structures and organic matter, moved with the deliberate grace of a being who had navigated the stars for millennia. "Any progress, Senior Navigator?" he asked, though his tone suggested he already knew the answer. "No, Director. The anomalies persist and appear to be intensifying," Vexel responded, her voice tight with professional frustration. "It's as if," she hesitated. "As if what, Navigator?" "As if human space doesn't simply defy our instruments, but exists in multiple states simultaneously, violating fundamental physical laws." Director Osric's bioluminescence dimmed momentarily, a sign of deep concern among his species. "The High Council has taken notice. This is no longer merely a cartographic curiosity. It represents a potential security concern of the highest order." Vexel understood the implications. In the delicate balance of galactic politics, the unknown was always perceived as threatening. Species whose territories couldn't be mapped couldn't be monitored, contained, or controlled. "I am assembling a special investigation team," Osric continued. "The Council has authorized a direct expedition into human territory." "But, Director, the navigational risks are substantial," Vexel objected. "No non-human vessel has successfully mapped a course through their space in nearly 15 cycles." "Yes," Osric finished for her, "which is why you will be leading the expedition, Senior Navigator. Your expertise in quantum spatial anomalies makes you uniquely qualified." The chamber fell silent as Vexel absorbed this information. An expedition into unmappable space was unprecedented and potentially suicidal. "The Celestial Seeker has been outfitted with our most advanced sensors," Osric continued. "You depart in 3 rotations. Choose your crew carefully." After the director departed, Vexel turned back to the holographic display. Human space shimmered and fluctuated before her, a puzzle that defied solution. In all her 400 cycles of navigation work, she had never encountered anything like it. "What are you hiding?" she whispered to the chaotic display. The Celestial Seeker departed from Central Hub with minimal ceremony. Aboard were Vexel, Kalmar, and a carefully selected team including quantum physicist Dr. Nerin, cultural anthropologist Professor Ilya, and security specialist Commander Torx. Their mission was classified at the highest level. Officially, they were conducting routine border surveys. As they approached the last clearly mappable coordinates before human territory, tension grew palpable on the bridge. The ship's quantum sensors were already detecting irregularities. "Fascinating," murmured Dr. Nerin, her tentacles dancing across the sensor controls. "The quantum field exhibits patterns I'd never observed before. It's almost as if probability itself is being manipulated." "Approaching the boundary zone," announced Kalmar. "Sensors at maximum sensitivity." The view screen showed what appeared to be normal space ahead. Stars, distant nebulae, the comforting emptiness of void. Yet the sensor readings told a different story. According to the instruments, they were simultaneously approaching and moving away from their destination. Space-time coordinates fluctuated wildly. "Navigation is becoming unreliable," reported Kalmar, his skin pulsing with concerned patterns. "Quantum positioning systems experiencing cascade failures." Vexel had anticipated this. "Switch to analog stellar navigation," she ordered. It was an ancient technique, rarely used in the age of quantum computing, but sometimes primitive methods worked where advanced technology failed. As they crossed the invisible boundary into human territory, the ship shuddered. It wasn't a physical impact, but something more profound, as if reality itself had shifted around them. "All systems experiencing quantum flux," reported Dr. Nerin, her voice betraying rare excitement. "It's as if the fundamental constants are fluid here." On the view screen, stars appeared to be in multiple positions simultaneously. Distance became a meaningless concept. The ship's AI fell silent, overwhelmed by contradictory data. "We're receiving a transmission," announced Commander Torx, his protective exoskeleton bristling with surprise. "It's human." A figure appeared on the view screen, a human male with olive skin and eyes that seemed unnaturally deep, as if they contained worlds within them. He wore no obvious technology, yet somehow communicated directly with their ship. "Welcome, explorers," he said, his voice perfectly translated into each crew member's native language simultaneously. "We've been expecting you." "How is this possible?" whispered Kalmar. "We didn't announce our trajectory. No one could have predicted our arrival point." The human smiled. "In human space, prediction is a complex concept. I am Ambassador Thomas Chen. You have questions about why your maps fail here. We have been waiting for someone to ask directly, rather than simply declaring our region a navigational hazard." Vexel stepped forward. "I am Senior Navigator Vexel of the Galactic Mapping Consortium. Our cartographic systems cannot reconcile the spatial anomalies in your territory. We seek to understand why." Ambassador Chen's image seemed to momentarily exist in multiple locations on the view screen before stabilizing. "Understanding requires experiencing. Follow the quantum beacon we're sending. It will guide you safely to New Tera. There we can show you rather than simply tell you." As the transmission ended, a strange pulse appeared on their sensors, not a conventional beacon, but a quantum signature that somehow remained stable amidst the chaos. "Should we trust this?" asked Commander Torx, manipulators hovering near the weapon's controls. Vexel considered their options. They had come for answers, and now they were being offered exactly that. The risk was substantial, but so was the potential discovery. "Follow the beacon," she ordered. "Let's see what humanity doesn't want the galaxy to map." As the celestial seeker followed the quantum signal deeper into human space, the laws of physics seemed increasingly like suggestions rather than rules. Stars appeared in impossible configurations. Space folded in ways that should have torn their ship apart, yet they moved through unharmed. The crew watched in silent awe as reality itself danced around them, beautiful and terrifying in its fluidity. "We're approaching a planetary system," reported Kalmar after what might have been hours or days. Time itself seemed inconsistent here. Before them appeared a blue-green world, but unlike any they had seen before. It seemed to shimmer with potential, as if multiple versions of the planet existed simultaneously. "New Tera," whispered Dr. Nerin, "the primary human colony world." As they entered orbit, Vexel realized why human space couldn't be mapped. It wasn't because humans were hiding something. It was because human space wasn't entirely there. The shuttle descended through an atmosphere that shouldn't have been stable, yet somehow cradled their craft with gentle precision. Below them, New Tera revealed itself, a world of impossible contradictions existing in harmony. Cities shimmered with quantum potential, buildings occupying multiple architectural states simultaneously. Forests flowed like living rivers across landscapes that reconfigured themselves even as they watched. "This defies everything we understand about reality," murmured Dr. Naren, her scientist's mind simultaneously thrilled and terrified. They landed on a platform that materialized as they approached, not constructed, but seemingly coalesced from probability itself. Ambassador Chen waited for them, but he was not alone. Around him stood a diverse group of humans, each radiating a strange energy that the visitor's senses struggled to process. "Welcome to New Tera," Ambassador Chen said, stepping forward. "You're the first official delegation to accept our invitation in nearly 20 cycles." Vexel and her team disembarked cautiously, their various biological systems struggling to adapt to an environment where quantum uncertainty was not just a microscopic phenomenon, but visibly manifest at the macroscopic level. "How is this possible?" Vexel asked, her scientific mind both fascinated and disturbed. "Matter cannot exist in multiple quantum states at a visible scale. The energy requirements alone would be astronomical. According to conventional physics," finished a human female who stepped forward. "Dr. Sophia Leon, Quantum Philosophy Department. What you're witnessing isn't technology as your civilizations understand it. It's a fundamental reimagining of the relationship between consciousness and reality." Ambassador Chen gestured, and the air around them shifted. Suddenly, they stood in a vast chamber that hadn't been there moments before, or perhaps had always been there, merely unobserved until now. 100 Earth years ago, he explained, humanity faced extinction, climate collapse, resource wars, technological upheaval, the usual self-destructive cascade that many young species encounter. In our darkest hour, a group of quantum physicists, neuroscientists, and philosophers made a discovery that changed everything. The air between them shimmered and images formed. Humans working in laboratories, mathematical equations beyond even Vexel's comprehension, experiments that seemed to bend reality itself. "We discovered that consciousness doesn't merely observe reality," continued Dr. Leon. "It participates in creating it. Quantum uncertainty isn't a limitation to be overcome. It's the fundamental language of existence." Professor Ilya, the cultural anthropologist, stepped forward. "You're claiming your species learned to manipulate quantum probability at will." "Not exactly," Ambassador Chen said. "We learned to stop imposing classical limitations on quantum potential. Your species, like most, evolved to perceive reality as fixed and objective, a survival adaptation that worked well enough for planetary existence. We evolved beyond that limitation." The implications were staggering. Vexel's sensory appendages trembled as she processed this information. "This is why our maps fail. We're attempting to impose fixed coordinates on space that exists in multiple probabilistic states simultaneously." "Precisely," nodded Dr. Leon. "Your mapping technology assumes a single objective reality that can be measured and defined. But here, reality is a conversation between observer and observed. Space itself responds to perception and intention." Commander Torx's protective plates shifted defensively. "This represents an existential threat to galactic security protocols. If you can manipulate reality at this level—" "We understand your concern," interrupted Ambassador Chen, "which is precisely why we've maintained a policy of isolation. We don't impose our perception of reality beyond our territories. But the galaxy has grown increasingly uncomfortable with the unmapped void we represent." The air shimmered again, and they found themselves in what appeared to be a garden, though the plants shifted and flowed in ways no ordinary vegetation could, responding to the emotions and thoughts of those nearby. "We're not hiding weapons or harboring aggressive intentions," Ambassador Chen continued. We're protecting the galaxy from premature exposure to a paradigm shift most species aren't ready to integrate. Imagine if we shared this understanding before other civilizations had developed the philosophical frameworks to contextualize it. Dr. Nuren's tentacles twisted in sudden understanding. Cognitive annihilation. Most sentient minds would be unable to process the contradiction between observed reality and fundamental understanding. The psychological trauma would be devastating. Yes, confirmed Dr. Liang solemnly. We've seen it happen with our own kind. Not everyone survived the transition. Those who did were forever changed. Vexel finally understood the true nature of the threat. The most dangerous thing in the galaxy wasn't a weapon or a predatory species. It was an idea that could shatter reality itself. The reality engineers. The garden around them shifted subtly, responding to the cascading emotions of the alien delegation. Flowers bloomed and faded in rapid succession. Trees bent toward the visitors like curious children, and the very ground beneath them seemed to pulse with awareness. Your entire civilization exists in a state of quantum flux, Vexel stated, struggling to process the implications. You've somehow merged consciousness with the quantum substrate of reality itself. Dr. Liang nodded. A crude but essentially accurate assessment. We call it conscious reality integration. The breakthrough came when we discovered that consciousness isn't merely an emergent property of physical processes. It's a fundamental force, like gravity or electromagnetism, capable of interacting directly with quantum probability fields. Kalmar's skin flashed with patterns of intellectual excitement. But the energy requirements to maintain such a state, that's where your models break down. Ambassador Chen explained. You're thinking of it as a technology that requires input energy to function. But once you understand that consciousness and reality are aspects of the same system, the energy question becomes irrelevant. It's more like discovering a language that was always there. Commander Torx remained unconvinced. His armored exoskeleton clicked nervously. This poses an incalculable security risk. A species that can manipulate the fabric of reality could render any defensive measure obsolete. That fear is precisely why we maintain our isolation, said a new voice. An elderly human woman approached, her movements fluid yet somehow existing in multiple states simultaneously. I am Dr. Eleanor Kahn, one of the original architects of the Conscious Reality Program. May I join you? Ambassador Chen nodded respectfully as Dr. Kahn continued. We recognized immediately that this discovery represented both humanity's salvation and potentially its greatest threat to the galactic community. That's why we created the boundary. The boundary? Asked Professor Ilya. The quantum discontinuity you encountered when entering our space, Dr. Kahn explained. It serves two purposes. First, it protects the galaxy from premature exposure to conscious reality manipulation. Second, it prevents us from accidentally imposing our subjective reality on external space. Vexel's analytical mind raced. You're containing yourselves as much as you're keeping others out. Exactly, Dr. Kahn smiled. The universe runs on certain fundamental laws. Most species evolved to perceive and interact with reality at the macroscopic level, where quantum effects average out into predictable classical physics. Attempting to force quantum behavior at the macro scale without proper preparation would be catastrophic. Dr. Nuren's scientific curiosity overcame her caution. But how did your species achieve this transition? The cognitive dissonance alone should have driven most of you insane. Dr. Kahn's expression grew solemn. Many did go insane. The early days were difficult. Of Earth's original 10 billion population, only about 1 billion successfully adapted to the new paradigm. The rest, she paused. Some died. Others exist in specialized realities where they can function without awareness of the larger implications. The visitors collectively recoiled at the casual mention of such devastation. It was not a decision taken lightly. Ambassador Chen added quickly. Earth was dying. Climate systems had collapsed beyond recovery. Resource wars had devastated entire continents. We faced extinction within a generation. Conscious reality integration was our last hope, a desperate gamble that enough of us would survive the transition to rebuild civilization. The air shimmered again, and suddenly they stood on a vast platform overlooking the human city. Unlike the chaotic quantum fluctuations they had witnessed earlier, here everything appeared deceptively normal. Buildings, streets, vehicles, people going about their business. Yet subtle discrepancies revealed themselves on closer inspection. Vehicles that moved without visible propulsion, buildings that seamlessly reconfigured to accommodate changing needs, plants that grew and bloomed in perfect synchronization with pedestrian patterns. "This is New Alexandria," explained Dr. Khan, "our primary research center and diplomatic hub. We've stabilized reality here to be more comprehensible to visitors." "You mean this is a simplified version of your actual existence?" asked Professor Ilya. "In a sense," Dr. Lang answered. "Think of it as a translation interface. Your brains evolved to process reality in a certain way. We're presenting information in a format you can comprehend without risking cognitive harm." Commander Torx had been unusually quiet, his tactical mind evaluating potential threats. Now he spoke directly to Ambassador Chen. "What do you want from the galaxy? Why allow this expedition when you've rejected all previous mapping attempts?" The ambassador smiled. "A refreshingly direct question. We want what most sentient species want: peaceful coexistence and exchange of ideas. But we've reached a developmental plateau. Isolation was necessary during our transition, but perpetual isolation leads to stagnation. We believe the time has come for controlled cultural exchange," added Dr. Khan. "Not technology transfer, that would be dangerous, but philosophical and artistic exchange. We have much to learn from species who perceive reality differently than we do." Vexel considered this carefully. "And what of the consortium's mapping problem? The Council requires definitive spatial coordinates for all member territories." "That presents a unique challenge," admitted Ambassador Chen. "Human space exists in a state of quantum superposition. It cannot be mapped conventionally because it doesn't occupy a single definitive position." Dr. Liang stepped forward with a small crystalline device. "However, we've developed this quantum reference beacon. It won't allow you to map our territory conventionally, but it will provide a stable reference point that your navigation systems can use to safely approach our boundary zone. From there," continued Ambassador Chen, "any ship wishing to enter human space can request a quantum pilot, a human navigator, who can guide them safely through the probability fields." Vexel accepted the device cautiously. "The consortium will need to verify its functionality and safety." "Of course," nodded Dr. Khan. "We expect nothing less." As the delegation prepared to depart, they were invited to a formal dinner in a grand hall that seemed to extend infinitely in all directions while somehow remaining intimately sized. Human and alien representatives sat together at a table laden with foods specifically prepared to be compatible with each species' biology. "There is one more thing you should understand before you leave," said Dr. Khan as the meal concluded. "Our evolution hasn't stopped. Each new generation of humans is born with greater intuitive understanding of quantum reality. Children now manipulate probability fields as easily as you and I breathe." "Are you saying your species is still evolving?" asked Professor Ilya. "Rapidly," confirmed Dr. Khan. "Within another century, we may bear little resemblance to the humans you see before you. That's another reason we've decided to open diplomatic channels now, while we still share enough common ground for meaningful communication." The implication sent a chill through the alien delegation. "What will you become?" whispered Kalmar. Ambassador Chen smiled gently. "We don't know. That's both the wonder and terror of conscious evolution. But we make this promise to the Galactic Compact. We will never impose our reality on yours. We will maintain the boundary. And we will always seek understanding before action." Later, as the celestial seeker prepared to depart, Vexel stood alone on the observation deck, watching New Tera shimmer with quantum potential below. Dr. Liang joined her. "You're troubled," the human observed. "I came seeking cartographic certainty. Vexel admitted. Instead, I found that reality itself is negotiable. Not negotiable, corrected Dr. Liang. Participatory. The universe has always been this way. Most species simply evolved perceptual filters that average quantum uncertainty into apparent stability. And your species removed those filters. We didn't remove them, Dr. Liang said. We learned to control them, to adjust our perception according to need. Sometimes we need the stability of classical physics. Sometimes we need the creative potential of quantum uncertainty. Both are valuable. Vexel's sensory appendages twitched thoughtfully. The consortium won't be satisfied with this arrangement. They require definitive maps. Perhaps it's time for the consortium to evolve its definition of mapping, suggested Dr. Liang. Not everything in the universe fits neatly into coordinate systems. As the celestial seeker departed human space, following the quantum beacon back to conventional reality, Vexel composed her report to the Galactic Council. How could she explain what they had witnessed? How could she convey the implications of a species that had transcended the fundamental constraints of physical reality? In the end, her recommendation was simple. Human space cannot and should not be conventionally mapped. Their territory exists in a state of quantum flux that defies traditional cartographic methods. However, they pose no immediate threat to galactic security and have provided viable navigation alternatives for necessary interaction. She added a personal note. What we have encountered is not a technological advancement, but an evolutionary one. Humanity has not conquered quantum uncertainty. They have embraced it. They have become something new, conscious participants in reality creation. The implications are both terrifying and wondrous. 3 cycles later, the Galactic Council voted to formally recognize the human quantum territory as a sovereign region with special diplomatic status. Maps of the galaxy now showed a shimmering iridescent zone where human space existed, not precisely defined, but acknowledged. Trade and cultural exchange began cautiously. Human philosophers and artists were particularly welcomed throughout the galaxy, while human scientists were regarded with a mixture of fascination and trepidation. Few non-humans chose to visit human space, but those who did returned profoundly changed, speaking of experiences beyond language. In her retirement ceremony as senior navigator, Vexel was asked what she had learned from the human expedition that had defined her career. I learned that the map is not the territory, she replied. And sometimes, the most important discoveries come not from charting the unknown, but from recognizing that some things cannot, and should not, be fully charted. The mystery itself has value. On New Tera, humans continued their evolution, exploring the frontiers of conscious reality in ways that even they could not predict. They maintained the boundary, protecting both themselves and the galaxy from premature integration. And in the great map room of the consortium, a holographic display still showed the shimmering quantum dance of human space, uncharted, undefined, and alive with possibility. The greatest terror and the greatest wonder in the galaxy remained the same, not what humans could do to reality, but what they might become.